Hi, I'm Dave Roscoe, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel, Right in the Gut. This is our first video, so bear with me. We're polishing off the rough edges here. The purpose of this channel is to talk about gut health, the importance of it, the relationship to overall health, as well as to discuss ways to improve it. And one of the ways to improve it is through eating fermented foods. This is something that people have done for thousands of years and has fallen out of favor in the age of refrigerated food preservation. But fermented foods are loaded with probiotics, and they're the good kind of probiotics because you're getting it from food, and whole food is the best way to go. Synthetic probiotics are just not proven to work. So today, what we're going to be talking about is lacto-fermentation. And lacto-fermentation focuses on a type of bacteria called lactobacillus. It's a family of bacteria that are beneficial and are abundant in a healthy gut and are responsible for preserving foods that are fermented in this way. So for today, I'm going to be doing some it's a combination here. I've got some beets, I've got some turnips, and I even threw in some leftover sliced carrots that I had. And I'm going to mix it in with everything together. And just to show you here, in this half-gallon jar, I've got some freshly sliced garlic, a couple of chili peppers, and some spices. I got a little bit of ginger and a little bit of smoked paprika just for flavor. And I put them on the bottom, and I'll explain why later. But for now, this is what we're working with. So the first thing that's really important is you have to weigh all of your ingredients. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ingredients into the jar. Obviously, we want to try to get these to lay down as flat as possible. So as a general rule, lacto-fermentation, what it does is it uses a salt brine, and that salt brine will encourage the growth of certain bacteria and inhibit the growth of others, which are less beneficial. And it's very important to get the right concentration of salt in your brine. And you'll see a lot of things on the internet that will kind of confuse you about that. And I found one site that I'm going to link in the comments below that will really shed some light about how to determine how much salt you need to use and why. But the important thing is everything has to go based on weight. Don't use units like cups and half cups and liters and all that, because that'll just get you into trouble. It's better to just use weights. I'm going to continue filling that up. And I've got to tell you, I haven't been doing this for very long, but I've done a lot of research on it, and I've got several successful fermentations under my belt at this point. And I got to tell you, I'm really enjoying it. I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, I've always liked things like sauerkraut and pickles, but I wasn't sure what was going to happen when I got into fermenting other things like turnips and beets and string beans and all that. And I got to tell you, so far it's delicious. I use them as I put them on salads. I use them as side dishes for meals, and I even put them on burgers and steaks or whatever, and it's really nice. And my wife has been really enjoying it as well. So, and it's helping keeping us healthy. I took a test a while back and I found some things that needed improving, which is what started me on all of this. And I'll be following up with further tests to see how well this is actually working. I'm hoping to see a significant improvement. But I tell you, it feels good to eat healthier, and it really is tasty. So I'm going to fill this up. We're just about there. It looks like I've gotten more vegetables than I need, but that's okay. Let's give this a shake to knock it down a little bit. Now I'm going to fill this up pretty darn high, and there's a reason for that as well, which I'll go over in just a moment. All right, I'll just throw a few more of these on here. All right, so now the reason I put all of the spices on the bottom is because one of the keys to fermentation is everything needs to stay submerged below the brine. And, because it's an anaerobic process, anything that's above the surface is exposed to oxygen, and that will foster the proliferation of bad bacteria. So everything needs to stay below the brine, and packing these up nice and high will help with that, and I'll show you why in a second. And also, the spices tend to be loose, so if they're anywhere but the bottom, they'll start to float up towards the top, especially like the bits of garlic and all that. And what you don't want is getting mold growing at the top. So this just makes sure that everything stays down below. And the only thing you have to worry about are your vegetables. So the next step is to find out the weight, so that you know how much water is needed and how much salt. And the way we do that is we're going to weigh an empty jar so that we can get the weight of the jar. And then you'll want to tear it out so that it zeroes out the jar. And so now we've got that. So now we'll just remove that from the scale and put this back on here, and that'll give us the weight of just the vegetables. So we've got a weight here of 614 grams. So we're gonna add the water, and I'm gonna try to get it to an even number of grams just to make the math easier, but it's not that important. If you have a calculator and you have a good scale, you can make it work. Now this is filtered water. It's really suggested that you use filtered water because you don't want to have chlorine in here if at all possible. Chlorine will kill bacteria, good or bad, and that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. So this is filtered water right from my fridge. I've used this many times for fermentation, so I know that it's good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that up. I'm just keeping an eye on the level. And I'm going to fill this up right up past the neck. All right. So we've got about 1,736 grams. So we'll just make a note of that. Now for root vegetables, they tend to be high in carbohydrates and sugars. So you can't use a standard lacto-fermentation where you just add the salt and let it do its thing, because that will tend to favor an alcohol fermentation, and we don't want that. So instead, what we want to do is we want to give the lacto-fermentation a heads up so that it can crowd out the bad bacteria. And the way we do that is with a little bit of brine from a previous fermentation. I'm not going to put it in right now, but I usually use about 2 tablespoons. But what we need to figure out now is the concentration of salt. So we have 1,736 grams of water and vegetables. And the reason why we take both the water and the vegetables is because the vegetables are mostly water. And when it mixes with the salt, we want to have a certain ratio of salinity. And if we don't take into account the water in the vegetables, the salinity will go down, and that'll favor the proliferation of bad bacteria. So let's see, 1736. And what we're going to use is 2.5% of salt. All right, so that turns out to be 43.4 grams. We'll go, if I can get it to 43.4, great. If it's not exact, it's not a big deal. So the way that we're gonna do this is we need to pour the water out. and this is the only tricky part really, without losing the vegetables. And we do that into another jar, which is why one of the reasons we started with 2. And then towards the end here, I'll just make sure to keep the vegetables from falling out like that. So we did all of this just to figure out how much water would actually be held in the jar, and then we have to get it out of there so that we can add the proper amount of salt to obviously just the water, because we'll need to make sure it's fully mixed before we add it back. So we're going to do our 43.4 grams of salt. So I'm just going to throw this in here and tear it out. All right. I'll just use, this is Himalayan sea salt. Most people argue it's the best type of salt to use. You don't really want to use, your standard iodized table salt, because it's lacking in a lot of minerals that get stripped out in the process. And iodine, you don't really want that in your fermentations, because it'll actually hinder the bacterial growth. So Himalayan sea salt, very, very easily obtainable on Amazon. And I'm going to go ahead and do our 43.4 grams. So mine doesn't go all the way to like fractional grams. So I'm going to go to 44 and then just back it out a little bit. There we go. That should be good enough. And then we'll add the salt to the water mixture. And we'll just give that a stir until it's fully dissolved. This could take a little while, so just keep at it. You want to heat up the water a little bit. That will speed up the process. But generally speaking, it'll take 3-4 minutes of stirring. I should have used a longer spoon. But okay. In fact, what I'm going to do is get a longer spoon. So now that we have a longer spoon, I'll just keep stirring this. Again, it should take a few minutes. The water changed color just from the short period of time from the heats. And so, this will all at some point take on some color. The salt process, takes the water out of the vegetables, which tends to make them crisper. You'll notice that when you do it yourself. And since most colors are also water soluble, it'll pull the colors out as well. Perfectly normal, nothing to worry about. All right. So now that we've done that, we're going to set that aside and go ahead and reintroduce the salt water to the vegetables. Okay, that comes all the way up. All right. So now the next step is to add the brine from a previous ferment. If you don't have this, you can go online and order freeze-dried starter. If you, after you've gone through a few fermentations, hold on to the brine. It's good for a whole lot of things. You can use them for salad dressings. Some people just drink it straight, or otherwise you can use it to start, another fermentation. So go ahead and add that in. All right. Again, I use 2 tablespoons. I don't know if that's the right amount. It seems to work. So the tricky part here is going to be keeping everything under the liquid. And I came across these things. I was using these fermentation weights that came with this other kit called the Easy Fermenter Starter Kit, put out by a company called Nourished Essentials. This is not by no means a product endorsement. It's just one that I found that I thought would serve my needs, and I've used it and it's worked as advertised, so take it for what it is. And they're made for wide mouth jars. The problem is when you get to these larger half-gallon size jars, it fits into the wide mouth part, but is not big enough to keep everything below the wider inner diameter of the jar. So these aren't very helpful. Now there are ways you can deal with it. A lot of people will take a cabbage leaf and kind of fit it to the inner diameter and then just shove it in there and then put the weight on top, which is fine if you have cabbage laying around. I don't want to keep a whole head of cabbage lying around just to do that. So I was looking for alternate solutions, and one that I came up with is this product called ViscoDisc. Again, not a product endorsement, just something that I found that seemed to satisfy what I'm trying to do. It's been in use in commercial industry now for over 10 years, and just recently released for the home market. And the way it works is pretty simple. You have some wings on the outside that kind of hold it against the inner rim, and then you have this ring which is pushed into and it sits below the neck to hold everything below, which is why it's important to have your brine up to the neck, so that when you push this in and this pushes the vegetables down, everything is submerged. Now, it doesn't have a fine screen on here, so some small floaties will make it up. You can leave them if you want, or fish them out later just to keep it nice and clean. And now they sell a device to push it in, but that seems overkill to me because it's fairly easy to put it in by hand. You just center it over the thing and just push it in. And then you just push it in until it's submerged. All of the little wings, not the wings, but the round parts. And then that's pretty much it. Now this will hold everything under the brine, and now we can go ahead and cap it. Now, this is the important part, another important part of this. Lacto-fermentation goes in stages. The first stage utilizes a type of bacteria that's not lactobacillus, but it's very aerobic, and it will convert a lot of sugars to carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide will build up in your jar. So you don't want to have an airtight lid, but so that the gas can build up and escape. But on the other hand, you don't want it so loose and open that other bacteria can get in. So what a lot of people will do will use like a regular mason jar lid, screw it on a little bit loose. Others will screw it on tight and then burp it every day. However you want to do that's up to you. One of the things I liked was the fermentation kit came with these easy fermenter lids, and they've got two cool features. One is that they'll allow the gases to escape, and the other is it's got a date wheel on top here so that you can set it to the date that it'll be ready, and then you just have to check it to see if it's ready to go. And it allows the gases to escape, but it doesn't allow anything to get back in. So I like these a lot. I've used them a bunch of times. They work great. So then you just close it up and let it go. Now in this case, it is, September 6th, and I'm gonna wait about a week. So I'm gonna set this to September 13th as my first, and then I'll start testing it. If I'm happy with the flavor, then I'll put it into cold storage and then just start eating it. Otherwise, I'll let it go for a few more days, test it again, and then just repeat that process until it gets to just the point that you like. Now, what you'll see the first few days, like within the first week, you'll probably see a lot of bubbles coming up. Again, that's perfectly normal. That's expected. Those bubbles will push the oxygen out through the lid, and this special valve will prevent it from getting back in. And all you have to do is put it somewhere, at room temperature. If you have trouble with temperature control in your house, higher temperatures will tend to speed up the fermentation, possibly resulting in mushier vegetables. Colder temperatures will slow it down, which means it'll take longer. If it's really cold, it could prevent the fermentation altogether, so keep that in mind. But usually within 72 to 80 degrees is perfectly fine. And just keep it out of direct sunlight, because direct sunlight will kill bacteria. And that's it. One other thing I'll note is that the kit comes with this device, which is a type of pump. And what this is for is evacuating the air from the jar. It works in conjunction with this special valve. Another feature I like. You don't need it right away, because the carbon dioxide, like I said, will push the oxygen out. But when that process ends and you start opening the jar to have taste tests to see if it's okay, you're reintroducing oxygen, which could cause mold to start. So in that case, what you do is you close the lid, you put this right over the lip on the top, and a couple of pumps, just 2 or 3, or is all that's needed. And then you pop it off, and now you have an aerobic seal again in the jar. So that's it. We'll check it again in about a week, and I'll keep you posted on how this is going. I want to thank you for joining me on this, and I hope you found this useful. Have a great day.